So we are starting book 3. This is about the girl named Midori Sao. We are going to learn about her. And the thing that I want you to keep in mind was the man that we had learned about, the man that Roscuro had tortured in the prison cell. And what did he have with him? He had a red tablecloth. Now I would read to you the chapter's title, but instead I'm just going to leave it at chapter 24 because I feel that after telling you that, the chapter's title gives a little too much away. I also want you to remember that Roscuro had asked him a couple of questions and he had said he had sold his child. And I want you to keep that in mind as we read this chapter also. Chapter 24. Again, reader, we must go backward before we can go forward. With that said, here begins a short history of the life and times of Midori Sao, a girl who was born into this world many years before the mouse Despero and the rat Chiaroscuro, a girl born far from the castle, a girl named for her father's favorite prize-winning pig. Midori Sao was 6 years old when her mother, holding on to Midge's hand and staring directly into Midge's eyes, died. "Ma," said Midge, "Ma, couldn't you stay here with me?" "Oh," said her mother, "who is that? Who is that holding my hand?" "It's me, Ma, Midori Sao." "Ah, child, let me go." "But I want you to stay here," said Midge, wiping first her runny nose and then her running eyes. "You want?" said Mother. "Yes," said Midge, "I want." "Ah, child, and what does it matter what you are wanting?" said her mother. She squeezed Midge's hand once, twice, and then she died, leaving Midge alone with her father, who on market day in a spring soon after his wife's death, sold his daughter into service for a handful of cigarettes, a red tablecloth, and a hen. "Papa?" said Midge, when her father was walking away from her with the hen in his arms, a cigarette in his mouth, and a red tablecloth draped across his shoulders like a cape. "Go on, Midge," he said. "You belong to that man now." "But I don't want to, Papa," she said. "I want to go with you." She took hold of the red tablecloth and tugged on it. "Lord, child," her father said, "and who is asking you what you want? Now go." He untangled her fingers from the cloth and turned her in the direction of a man who had bought her. Midge watched her father walk away, the red tablecloth billowing out behind him. He left his daughter. And reader, as you already know, he did not look back, not even once. Can you imagine it? Can you imagine your father selling you for a tablecloth, a hen, and a handful of cigarettes? Close your eyes, please, and consider it for just a moment. Done? I hope the hair on the back of your neck stood up as you thought of Midge's fate and how it would be if it were your own. Poor Midge, what would become of her? You must, frightened though you may be, read on and see for yourself. Reader, it is your duty. Chapter 25. A Vicious Circle. Midori Sao called the man who purchased her uncle, as he said she must, and also as he said she must, Midge tended to Uncle's sheep and cooked Uncle's food and scrubbed Uncle's kettle. She did all of this without a word of thanks or praise from the man himself. Another unfortunate fact of life with Uncle was that he very much liked giving Midge what he referred to as a good clout to the ear. In fairness to Uncle, it must be reported that he did always inquire whether or not Midge was interested in receiving the clout. Their daily exchanges went something like this. Uncle: "I thought I told you to clean the kettle." Midge: "I cleaned it, Uncle. I cleaned it good." Uncle: "Ah, it's filthy. You have to be punished, won't you?" Midge: "Gore, Uncle, I cleaned the kettle." "Are you saying that I'm a liar, girl?" "No, Uncle." "Do you want good clout to the ear yet?" "No, thank you, Uncle, I don't." Alas, Uncle seemed to be entirely unconcerned with what Midge wanted, as her mother and father had been. The discussed clout to the ear was always delivered. Delivered, I'm afraid, with a great deal of enthusiasm on Uncle's part, and received with absolutely no enthusiasm on the part of Midge. These clouts were alarmingly frequent, and Uncle was scrupulously fair in paying attention to both the right and left side of Midori Sao. So it was that, after a time, the young Midge's ears came to resemble not so much ears as a piece of cauliflower stuck to either side of her head, and they became about as useful to her as pieces of cauliflower. That is to say, they all but ceased their function as ears. Words for Midge lost their sharp edges, and they lost their edges altogether, and then the lost edges altogether became blurry, blankety things that she had a great deal of trouble making any sense out of. The less Midge heard, the less she understood, and the less she understood, the more things she did wrong. The more things she did wrong, the more clouts to the ear she received, and the less she heard. This is what is known as a vicious cycle, and Midgery Sow was right in the center of it, which is not, reader, where anyone would want to be. But then you know what Midgery Sow wanted had never been much concern to anyone. So, we know that there was this clout to her ear. What you can assume from that is he was hitting her in some way. He was smacking her alongside the ear or pulling at her ear or doing something to her ear that made her lose her hearing. And what she was already doing wrong, as according to this uncle that bought her, which he was not her uncle, it was some man. He was kind of using her almost like a slave. Whatever she did wrong originally when she could hear, she was doing even worse when she couldn't, because she couldn't understand what people were saying. That's how the words became all blankety. They became soft and fuzzy, and she couldn't really hear them well. So, what we know is that Midgery is really having a very difficult time, especially since the death of her mother, and especially because her father sold her, and she doesn't understand why. She doesn't know why she was sold and left for gone. So, we will find that out, I believe, later in this book. Thanks for listening.